The rain had already soaked through the thin fabric of the man's jacket by the time the police lights flashed across the hospital parking lot. Red,
I have
blue,
to do this.
red
There's no
again.
other way.
Ethan Cole stood frozen near the curb, his hands trembling, his eyes locked on the sliding glass doors ahead. Inside, somewhere beyond those walls, his little boy was fighting for breath. Outside, every stare felt like an accusation. "Sir, don't move," a voice shouted from behind him. Ethan swallowed hard. He wanted to speak. He needed to explain. But the words wouldn't come. His hands rose slowly,
tell you something
not in
important.
surrender,
What is it?
but in
Tell me now.
desperation.
It's about the
And he
security.
began to
We have to move
sign.
quickly.
Across the lot,
We
a
need to
man
address
in a
this
tailored coat
immediately.
noticed.
I understand, but
Before
this
we
is
go any
unexpected.
further,
What does
I'm
this mean for
curious.
us?
Where are you watching from right now? Stories like this travel farther than we ever expect. Share your city or country
Are you
below.
sure about this?
And let's remind
I have
ourselves
to
how
do this.
connected
There's
we
no
really
other way.
are. The man in the coat was Michael Grant, CEO of a global tech firm whose name glowed on billboards and conference stages. He hadn't planned to be at the hospital that night. His assistant's daughter had been rushed into surgery after a car accident, and Michael had come quietly without press, without escorts. He was halfway to his car when he saw Ethan. Most people only saw what the police saw. A soaked, shaking man near an
tell you
ER
something
entrance,
important.
What is it?
refusing
Tell
to
me
answer
now.
questions,
It's about the security.
hands
We
moving
have to move
strangely in the air. One
need to
officer
address this
had
immediately.
already rested
I
his palm
understand,
on his
but this is
holster.
unexpected.
"Sir,
What does this
last
mean for
warning,
us?"
hand where I can see them." Michael felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, recognition.
Are you sure
Those weren't
about
wild
this?
gestures.
I have to do this.
They were
There's
words.
no other way.
He stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "Officer," he said calmly. "He's using sign language." The officer glanced back, annoyed. "Sir, step away." Michael didn't raise his voice. He raised his hands and signed back. Ethan's eyes snapped up. For the first time since the sirens, someone understood him. "My son, inside. Asthma. He can't breathe."
I need to
Michael
tell you something
translated aloud,
What is it?
his
Tell me
voice
now.
steady but
It's about the
urgent.
security.
His
We
son
have
is
to move quickly.
inside. Severe
We need
asthma
to address
attack.
this immediately.
He's deaf.
I understand, but
He
this
can't
is
hear your
unexpected.
commands.
What does this
The
mean for
officer's
us?
posture shifted, just slightly. "Enough. And the weapon?" Another officer asked, suspicious.
Are you sure
Ethan's
about
hands
this?
flew
I
again,
have to do
faster
this.
now.
There's no other way.
Panic bleeding through every movement. I signed inhaler. Not weapon. Inhaler is in my pocket. Michael turned. He has an inhaler, not a weapon. Silence fell heavy between the rain and the flashing lights. The officer slowly removed his hand from his gun. "Sir," he said, softer now. "We're sorry. Go. Your son needs you." Ethan didn't wait.
I need to tell you
He
something
ran.
important.
What is
Michael
it? Tell
watched
me
him
now.
disappear through the
It's about the
hospital
security.
doors,
We have to move
heart
quickly.
pounding. Not for what
We need
almost
to address
happened,
this immediately.
but from how
I
close it
understand,
came.
but this is
Inside the ER,
What does this mean
Ethan
for
found
us?
his son, Noah, small and pale beneath tangled wires. The boy's chest rose unevenly, each breath a battle. A nurse pressed a mask gently over his face as medication flowed. Ethan signed shakily, "Daddy's here." Noah's fingers twitched in reply. Scared. "I know," Ethan whispered, even though his son couldn't hear him. "Me too." Hours later, when the crisis passed and the machines finally slowed their angry beeping, Ethan sat alone in the hallway, head in his hands. The adrenaline drained, leaving only exhaustion and shame. He thought of the officer's eyes. The way fear had flashed there. How easy things could have ended differently. A shadow fell across the floor. Michael stood there, no longer a CO, just a man with tired eyes. "Your son's stable," Michael said gently. "The nurse told me." Ethan stood quickly, then stopped, unsure. He signed a simple phrase. "Thank you." Michael nodded. "You don't need to thank me." But Ethan did, because no one ever stepped in before. They sat together on plastic chairs, strangers bound by a moment that refused to let go. Ethan's life spilled out in fragments. How Noah's mother had passed 2 years earlier. How layoffs had taken his job. How moving cities meant losing the small deaf community he once leaned on. How every emergency felt like a test he was doomed to fail. Michael listened, really listened. "If you were there," Michael finally said, more to himself than to Ethan, "you did exactly what you could." Ethan's hands trembled as he signed back. "Sometimes doing your best still isn't enough." Michael didn't answer right away. He looked down the hallway, where a janitor hummed softly, where a nurse laughed behind a curtain, where life kept moving no matter how close it came to breaking. Sometimes, he said quietly, it's enough that someone sees you. Ethan looked at him, eyes wet, and for the first time that night, he believed it might be true. The night wasn't over yet. Not even close. Because what waited ahead, what would surface before morning, would change both of their lives in ways neither man could imagine. Morning crept into the hospital, like it didn't want to be noticed. Pale light slid across the linoleum floors, softened the harsh edges of the night. Ethan hadn't slept. He sat curled forward in the chair beside Noah's bed, counting breaths, watching the slow rise and fall of his son's chest, as if it were the only thing anchoring him to the world. Noah's color had returned. Not fully, but enough to ease a tight knot in Ethan's stomach. The boy slept now, fingers loosely wrapped around the edge of his blanket, the oxygen mask resting nearby like a silent guardian. Ethan brushed Noah's hair back gently. His hand still shook. Across the room, Michael stood near the window, phone pressed his ear, speaking in a low voice. Not commands. Not business. Apologies. Quiet reassurances. When he ended the call, he didn't turn right away. He watched the reflection in the glass. Two men from different worlds bound by a single misunderstanding that could have ended in tragedy. You should go home, Michael said softly, approaching. Try to rest. Ethan shook his head, signing slowly so his hands wouldn't betray him. I'll stay. He waked scared. Michael nodded. Of course. There was a pause, one of those fragile silences where something important waits to be said. Do you have anyone? Michael asked. Family? Friends. Ethan swallowed. His hands hovered, then moved. Not here. The words landed heavier than Michael expected. He thought of his own penthouse, quiet, immaculate, empty most nights. Thought of how many people knew his name, and how few actually knew him. I can help, Michael said carefully. With resources, doctors, support. Ethan looked up, eyes wary. Pride and fear wrestled behind them. I don't want charity. Michael didn't flinch. Neither would I. He pulled out a card, not glossy, not branded, just a name and a number handwritten on the back. This isn't money, he said. It's access. Use it if you want, or don't. Ethan stared at the card like it might disappear. Then he tucked it carefully into his wallet, as if placing it somewhere safe inside himself. Right then, if you were watching this moment unfold, what would you have done? Would you step in or look away, afraid of crossing a line? Tell me honestly in the comments. And if this moment stirred something in you, tap like. Sometimes that's how we show compassion when words fall short. Later that day, a social worker stopped by, then a respiratory specialist, then someone from hospital administration, unexpectedly kind, unusually attentive. Ethan didn't connect the dots right away. Michael never mentioned a thing. By evening, Noah was awake, sipping juice through a straw, cheeks fuller, eyes brighter. He signed excitedly about the stickers a nurse had given him, about the funny beeping machines, about how he thought the oxygen mask made him look like a superhero. Ethan laughed silently, shoulders shaking. For the first time in months, the future didn't feel like a wall. 2 days later, they were discharged. Outside, the rain had cleared. The air smelled clean like a reset. Michael waited by the curb. No security. No driver. I'm glad he's okay, he said. Ethan signed slowly, deliberately. You didn't just help me that night. You saw me. Michael felt something twist in his chest. I think I needed that too. They stood there a moment longer, then went their separate ways. Or so it seemed. 3 weeks passed. Ethan's phone buzzed with an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A message appeared on the screen. Text, then video. It was Michael. I hope this isn't strange. The caption read. I remembered something you said. The video played. Michael sat in a modest room, sleeves rolled up, hands raised, signing. Sometimes doing your best still isn't enough. Ethan's breath caught. Michael continued, slower now, careful but sincere. I've been learning. Not very good yet. But I wanted to say you weren't wrong. You were just alone. Tears blurred Ethan's vision. Another message followed. There's a community center opening downtown, Michael wrote. Free classes, job placement, childcare. They need a coordinator who understands what it means to be unheard. Ethan stared at the screen. Read it again, and again. Hope scared him more than despair ever had. He signed back, hands unsteady. Why me? The reply came quickly. Because you survived something that almost broke you and you stayed kind. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed long after the screen went dark. Noah slept nearby, breathing easy, dreaming of superheroes. For the first time, Ethan wondered if the night in the rain wasn't the worst moment of his life, but the beginning of something else. And yet, beneath that fragile hope, something unresolved lingered. A truth about that night, about the warning that had been misunderstood. A truth that would soon come to light, and test whether kindness alone could carry the weight of what was coming next. Ethan accepted the job. He told himself it was temporary, just until Noah was stronger, just until things steadied. But deep down, he knew better. He needed this. Not the paycheck, but the feeling that his life wasn't shrinking anymore. The community center smelled like fresh paint and sawdust when he first walked in. Folding chairs lined the walls. A whiteboard leaned crookedly near the front desk. There were no polished signs yet, no donors' names carved into plaques. Just people. Real ones. Nervous ones. On the first morning, Ethan stood before a small group. 3 deaf adults, a single mother with a toddler, an older man who avoided eye contact. Ethan signed, spoke when he could, moved between worlds the way he always had. I don't have all the answers, he said quietly, but I know what it feels like to be ignored when you're trying to survive. They listened. Weeks passed. The center filled. Laughter echoed down the hallways. Noah did his homework at a back table, legs swinging, safe. For the first time since his wife died, Ethan felt useful. Then the email arrived. Internal review, incident report follow-up. Ethan stared at the subject line, pulse quickening. The message was short. Cold. Legal. A body cam review from the night at the hospital had been flagged. The phrase possible weapon had triggered an internal investigation. Statements were being revisited. Clarifications requested. Ethan's hands went numb. That night came rushing back. The officer's voice, the rain, the way everything balanced on a misunderstanding. He remembered something he hadn't told Michael. Something he hadn't told anyone. Because he wasn't sure it mattered. Until now. Ethan requested a copy of the footage. When it arrived, he waited until Noah was asleep. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. He sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, hands folded like he was about to pray. The video began. Rain streaked across the lens. Shaky movement, voices overlapping. Then, there he was, panicked, signing fast. Too fast. He watched himself sign the word again. Inhaler. But in his fear, his hand shape had been sloppy. The motion sharp. He froze the frame. Replayed it. From the wrong angle. It did look like something else. Weapon. Ethan closed the laptop, chest tight. He had been trying to save his son. And almost lost everything. The next day, Michael called. They're reopening the report, he said gently. No charges. Just documentation. Ethan signed back during the video call, jaw tight. They think I lied. Michael shook his head. No, they think it was unclear. Unclear can still destroy people. Ethan signed. Michael didn't argue. Come by my office, he said. Let's talk in person. The building was glass and steel, towering over the street. Ethan felt small walking in, hands in pockets, shoulders tense. But Michael met him in the lobby, no assistance, no hurry. In the office, sunlight poured across the floor. Michael handed Ethan a tablet. I had the footage analyzed, he said, by experts in ASL interpretation. They agree it was a miscommunication. Ethan exhaled just a little, but Michael added, there's more. He hesitated, then continued. That night, the officers weren't wrong to be cautious. A report had gone out minutes earlier. Different man. Same area. Actual weapon. Ethan's heart dropped. They thought I was him. Yes. The truth settled heavy between them. If you hadn't stepped in, Ethan signed slowly, what would have happened? Michael didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. That question lingered long after Ethan left the office. At home, Noah asked why his dad looked sad again. Ethan smiled and signed, just tired. But sleep didn't come. Because now Ethan understood something terrifying. Kindness hadn't saved him alone. Timing had. And timing could fail someone else. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would, right when it mattered most? If yes, write yes and share their name below. Sometimes gratitude deserves to be spoken aloud. The investigation concluded quietly. No fault assigned. No apology given. Life moved on. But Ethan couldn't. At the community center, he started new workshops. Clear emergency signing. Crisis communication. How to slow down when fear takes over. People came in droves. One afternoon, a woman approached him after class, eyes red. My brother is deaf, she signed shakily. Last year, police didn't understand him. She couldn't finish. Ethan nodded. He didn't need her to. That night, Ethan drafted a proposal. Training programs. Mandatory ASL basics for first responders. Not just signs, context. Humanity. He sent it to Michael. The reply came an hour later. Let's do it. Momentum built fast. Too fast. Media attention followed. Headlines. Interviews. Ethan hated the camera, but he spoke anyway. For the ones who couldn't. And that's when the message arrived. Anonymous. No return address. Stop digging. Some stories are meant to stay buried. Ethan stared at the screen, heart pounding. He thought of Noah asleep in the next room, of the rain, of the night everything almost ended. This time, fear didn't freeze him. It sharpened him, because now Ethan knew silence was a real weapon, and he was done holding it. Ethan didn't show the message to anyone at first. He read it again the next morning, then deleted it. Or at least, he thought he did. The word stayed anyway, lodged somewhere behind his ribs, surfacing whenever the room went quiet. Stop digging. At the community center, things looked normal on the surface. Kids laughed in the hallway. A volunteer spilled coffee and apologized too many times. A class on job skills ran late because no one wanted to leave. But Ethan felt it, the shift, the subtle tension, like the air before storm. Michael noticed it too. You're distracted, he said one afternoon, leaning against the doorway of Ethan's office. The room was barely bigger than a storage closet, walls covered in handwritten notes and flyers, proof of work that mattered. Ethan signed carefully. Someone doesn't want this training program. Michael frowned. Who? I don't know. Threats. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Michael straightened. You should have told me. I didn't want to make it bigger. Michael's voice softened. That's usually how things get bigger. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, Noah was helping a younger kid with math, signing patiently, the way Ethan did. Watching his son move with that quiet confidence filled Ethan with both pride and fear. This is working. Ethan signed finally. People are listening. Yes, Michael said. And when people listen, others get nervous. The pilot program launched anyway. 3 precincts, 2 fire departments, 1 emergency dispatch center. The first session was awkward, uniform stiff, arms crossed, eyes skeptical. Ethan stood at the front, palms open. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong, he said. I'm here to show you what fear looks like when it has no voice. He told them about the rain, about Noah, about the word inhaler that almost became a death sentence. No dramatics, just truth. Something shifted. Hands slowly unfolded. Questions followed. Honest ones. How do we slow someone down without escalating? What signs matter most? What if we get it wrong? Ethan answered them all. After the session, one officer lingered. Younger. Nervous. My sister is deaf, he said quietly. I never thought about how this would feel for her. Ethan nodded. That was enough. Now it's your turn. Pause for a second and think. What's one small good thing you've done recently, even if no one noticed? Share it below. Sometimes reading real kindness reminds us we're not alone in trying. The message came back again. Different number. Same tone. Last warning. Michael insisted on security. Ethan refused. If I hide, he signed, they win. Michael didn't like it, but he understood. Then the break-in happened. Nothing was stolen. That's what scared Ethan most. Drawers rifled through. Papers scattered. His laptop untouched. But one thing was missing. The printed proposal. The one outlining statewide expansion. On his desk, written in thick black marker. This isn't your fight. The police report was filed. Routine. Hollow. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat on the floor beside Noah's bed, listening to the steady rhythm of his son's breathing. Each rise and fall felt like a fragile promise. He thought about walking away, about taking the job quietly, helping locally, keeping his head down. It would be safer. But then he remembered the woman from class, her unfinished sentence, her brother. He remembered the officer who stayed late to ask questions. He remembered the rain. The next morning, Ethan called a press conference. Michael didn't try to stop him. Cameras flashed. Microphones crowded close. Ethan stood at the podium, hands visible. I was warned to stay silent, he said, so I'm going to speak louder. He explained the program, the threats, the reason it mattered. I'm not accusing, he said. I'm inviting, to learn, to do better, to make sure fear never speaks for someone again. The story exploded. Support poured in. Donations, volunteers, messages from across the country. But so did scrutiny. Online comments turned sharp. Doubt crept in. People questioned motives. Michael's motives. Ethan's past. Late one night, Michael called. They're digging into your record, he said carefully. Everything. Ethan signed calmly. There's nothing to hide. Michael paused. I know, but there's something you never told me. Ethan's heart stuttered. What? He signed. Michael exhaled. That night at the hospital, before the police arrived, someone did pull a weapon. A man was arrested an hour later. Different name, different face. Ethan felt the room tilt. And, he signed, and, Michael said quietly, he claimed you distracted the officers. Silence crashed down. Ethan's mind raced. That's impossible. I believe you, Michael said, but belief doesn't always win. Ethan stared at his hands. The same hands that tried to save his son. The same hands now being questioned again. This time, kindness wouldn't be enough. Truth would have to fight. And the cost of that fight was about to be revealed. The interrogation room smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Too bright. Too quiet. The kind of place where seconds felt louder than words. Ethan sat at the metal table, hands folded tight in his lap. Across from him, two detectives watched, not unkindly, but carefully. A camera blinked red in the corner. This is just procedure, one of them said. We need your account again. Again. Ethan nodded and raised his hands. He told the story slowly this time. Each sign deliberate, each word chosen with care. The rain, Noah, the officers, the misunderstanding. Michael stepping in. When he finished, the room was silent. The second detective leaned forward. Do you recognize this man? A photo slid across the table. Ethan's breath caught. He'd seen that face before. Not clearly, not fully, but enough. It was a man from the far end of the parking lot. The one pacing. The one who kept reaching into his jacket. The one Ethan had noticed for half a second, before everything went wrong. Ethan signed carefully. I saw him. Briefly. He looked scared. Did you see a weapon? The detective asked. Ethan shook his head. No. I was focused on my son. They exchanged a look. This man claims, the detective continued, that your actions caused confusion, that officers were distracted. Ethan's hands dropped. For a moment, he couldn't move. Then he signed, slower than ever. I was trying to save a child. The words hung in the air, heavy and fragile. After hours of questions, they let him go. No charges. No arrest. But no closure either. Outside, Michael waited. How bad? He asked. Ethan signed with tired hands. They're not done. Michael nodded. Neither are we. But the world didn't wait. The headline broke the next morning. Advocates' role questioned in night of hospital chaos. Comments flooded in. Supportive. Angry. Cruel. Ethan stopped reading after someone wrote, maybe if he learned to speak. He closed the laptop and sat in the dark. Noah patted in quietly, blanket dragging behind him. He climbed into Ethan's lap and rested his head against his chest. Ethan wrapped his arms around him, breathing in the familiar warmth. Daddy sad? Noah signed. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Noah thought for a moment, then signed back. It's okay. I'm breathing. That was it. That was everything. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart. Sometimes one small symbol says what our hearts can't put into words. The next weeks were brutal. Sponsors hesitated. One precinct paused the training. A board member resigned quietly. Michael absorbed the pressure with calm resolve. But Ethan could see the strain behind his eyes. This is my fault. Ethan signed one night. Michael shook his head. No, this is what happens when truth challenges comfort. Still, doubt crept in. Ethan replayed that night over and over. Wondered if he should have done something differently. Slower signs. Bigger movements. Louder gestures. But fear doesn't give you time to be perfect. The turning point came unexpectedly. A woman emailed Ethan late one evening. Subject line, I was there too. She was a nurse. On break. Watching from inside the ER. She had seen Ethan signing. Seen the officers tense. Seen Michael step forward. And she had seen something else. The man with the weapon. He dropped it behind a car, she wrote. I saw it clearly. I reported it that night, but no one followed up. Attached was a time-stamped photo from her phone. Grainy. Crooked. Clear enough. Michael's legal team moved fast. The photo changed everything. The narrative shifted. Quietly at first. Then all at once. A correction was issued. Then an apology. Carefully worded. Public. The investigation closed. Ethan stood on the steps of the community center as reporters asked questions. This time his hands didn't shake. I don't want blame, he said. I want understanding. Later that night, alone, the weight finally hit him. He had almost been crushed by a story that wasn't his. And others hadn't survived that kind of pressure. He thought of the man in the photo, of fear spiraling into violence, of systems stretched too thin. He didn't hate him. That scared him too, because forgiveness was harder than anger. And the final test, the one that would decide who Ethan truly was still waiting. The man's name was revealed quietly, almost reluctantly, in the follow-up report. Daniel Reeves, 34, history of untreated PTSD, no prior violent convictions. The weapon, a small handgun, had been legally purchased, illegally carried that night. Panic, paranoia, poor timing layered on worse choices. Ethan read the report once. Then again, Daniel was being held pending a hearing. Public opinion had already decided who he was. Ethan couldn't, because every line about fear felt uncomfortably familiar. Michael found Ethan sitting alone in the community center after hours, lights dimmed, paper spread across the table. You're thinking about him, Michael said. Ethan didn't deny it. He was scared. Ethan signed. Like me, Michael exhaled slowly. Fear doesn't excuse a weapon. No, Ethan agreed. But it explains it. They sat with that truth. Days later, Ethan did something no one expected. He asked to visit Daniel. Michael tried to talk him out of it. You don't owe him anything. Ethan signed back with steady hands. I owe myself peace. The detention center was colder than the hospital had been. Gray walls, hard benches, the kind of place hope didn't linger long. Daniel entered the room in cuffs, eyes darting, shoulders tight. When he saw Ethan, confusion crossed his face. You, Daniel muttered, from the hospital. Ethan nodded, then signed slowly, making sure the interpreter followed exactly. I'm not here to accuse you. Daniel scoffed. You already ruined my life. Ethan felt the sting, but he stayed. I was trying to save my son. Daniel's jaw tightened. So was I, he said bitterly. Or at least, I thought I was saving myself. Silence stretched between them. Ethan studied the man, not the headlines. The tremor in his hands. The exhaustion etched into his face. Did you mean to hurt anyone? Ethan signed. Daniel shook his head, eyes suddenly wet. No, I just wanted it to stop. The noise, the fear. Ethan nodded. He understood that kind of night. What you did was dangerous. Ethan signed. But I don't believe you're only that moment. Daniel looked up, startled. No one had spoken to him like that since his arrest. I don't want forgiveness, Daniel said quietly. I don't deserve it. Ethan signed, gentle but firm. Forgiveness isn't for what you did. It's for what I don't want to become. Daniel broke then, shoulders shaking, tears falling without sound. When the visit ended, Ethan walked out lighter and heavier. He didn't know if he'd done the right thing, but he knew he'd done a human thing. Outside, Michael waited. You didn't have to, he said. Ethan signed back. I needed to see the whole story. Be honest. Could you forgive someone after what they did if fear, not hatred, was at the center of it? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would be too much to carry. The trial was brief. Daniel accepted a plea. Mandatory treatment. No prison time, just monitoring, therapy, restrictions. Some called it mercy. Others called it weakness. Ethan didn't read the comments. He was too busy. The training program expanded. Nationwide. Grants poured in. First responders across the country learned how to slow down, how to see hands not as threats, but as voices. One evening, Ethan received a letter, handwritten, from Daniel. I'm starting therapy. It read, for the first time, I think I might want to live without fear. Thank you for seeing me as more than my worst night. Ethan folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer, not as a trophy, as a reminder. At home, Noah practiced signing new words, beaming with pride. Daddy helps people, he signed. Ethan smiled. We help each other. The world hadn't become safer overnight, but it had become softer in small, meaningful ways. And sometimes that was enough to begin again. Yet the story wasn't finished. Because the final chapter, the one that would turn pain into purpose for everyone watching, was still waiting to be written. The auditorium lights dimmed one by one, leaving the stage washed in a warm, amber glow. The hum of conversation softened into a shared hush, the kind that settles when people sense something meaningful is about to happen. Ethan stood just off stage, palms pressed together, breathing slowly. Not to calm fear. He'd learned how to live with that, but to steady gratitude. Rows of seats were filled. Officers in uniform, EMTs, nurses, teachers, parents, kids swinging their feet. Michael sat in the front row, jacket folded neatly on his lap, eyes lifted with quiet pride. Noah peeked from behind the curtain and signed, You got this. Ethan smiled and nodded. We got this. He stepped into the light. The room waited. I used to think being heard meant being loud. Ethan began, voice soft, hands moving in tandem. But that night in the rain taught me something else. That being understood can save a life. He didn't retell the story the way headlines had. He showed it. He described the rain's sting, the blur of lights, the way panic turns seconds into cliffs. He showed how hands can speak when voices fail, and how fear can misread both. A murmur moved through the crowd. Not agreement yet, but recognition. Since then, he continued, we've trained thousands. Not to be perfect, just to pause, to ask, to see. On the screen behind him, images flickered. Classrooms filled with signing hands, officers kneeling to meet eye level, a dispatcher's desk with a simple chart taped beside the monitor. Slow down. Ask. Observe. Applause swelled, then quieted. Ethan lifted his hands again. This work didn't happen because of one person. It happened because people chose to care when it was easier not to. He looked out, scanning faces, letting the silence do its work. And because hope, real hope, moves when we do. If you believe love still wins, comment amen. Let's fill this space with hope. Someone scrolling right now might need to see it. Afterward, the crowd spilled into the lobby, voices bright, hugs exchanged. cards traded. A young officer approached Ethan, helmet tucked under his arm. "My first call after training," he said, voice tight. "Deaf driver. Panic rising. I remembered your words." I slowed down. He swallowed. "It worked." Ethan placed a hand over his heart and nodded. No speech could honor that better than the man's steady gaze. Later, as the building emptied, Michael joined Ethan by the window overlooking the street. Cars passed. Life moved. "You changed things," Michael said. Ethan shook his head. "We did." Michael smiled. "Fair." At home that night, Noah taped a crooked drawing to the fridge. Two stick figures with big hands, lines between them like bridges. At the top, in careful letters, "Talk with hands." Ethan crouched to Noah's level. "What's this part?" He signed, pointing to the lines. Noah grinned. "Hope." The weeks that followed were quieter. Not empty, just steady. The program found its rhythm. Communities adapted. Mistakes still happened, but fewer. When they did, people talked instead of shouting. One afternoon, a package arrived at the center. Inside was a small plaque, simple wood, no logo. The engraving read, "To the hands that taught us to listen." Ethan mounted it by the door, not as a monument, but as a welcome. He thought about Daniel sometimes. The letters grew less frequent, but steadier. Therapy was hard. Progress wasn't straight. Neither was forgiveness. Ethan knew that now. On a crisp evening, Ethan and Noah walked home together, leaves crunching underfoot. Noah skipped ahead, then stopped, turned back, and signed, "Daddy, are we heroes?" Ethan laughed softly. "No. Why not? Because heroes save the day once. We're just people who keep trying." Noah considered this, then nodded solemnly, as if it made more sense than heroics ever could. From the sidewalk, a neighbor waved. Ethan waved back. Small gestures. Ordinary grace. The story had been loud once, sirens and headlines and fear. Now it lived in quieter places, in classrooms and dispatch centers, in the space between a question and a pause. And in that quiet, something remarkable took root. Not perfection, but care. And that, Ethan knew as he locked the door and flicked off the light, was how the world kept going. The first snowfall came early that year. Soft, quiet, the kind that muffles the world instead of stopping it. Ethan watched flakes gather on the community center's front steps as he locked up for night. The plaque by the door caught the glow of the streetlight, would warm against the cold air. Inside, the rooms were empty now, but not silent. Not really. They carried echoes, hands moving, questions asked, fear softened into understanding. Noah tugged at Ethan's sleeve, pointing upward, eyes wide. "Snow looks like falling hands," he signed. Ethan smiled. "Maybe it's the sky trying to talk to us." They walked home slowly, boots crunching, breath visible. A passing car slowed too fast at the corner, tires slipping just enough to jolt Ethan's heart. Old reflex. He inhaled, exhaled, felt Noah's small hand squeeze his. They were okay. At home, Ethan made cocoa while Noah changed into pajamas. The kettle whistled, steam fogging the window. For a moment, Ethan stood still, letting the quiet settle. He thought about the night it all began. The rain, the lights, the word that almost cost him everything. He thought about how close fear had come to stealing his voice forever, and how kindness, imperfect human kindness, had given it back. A knock came at the door. Ethan paused and opened it. Michael stood there, scarf dusted with snow, a familiar half-smile on his face. "Hope I'm not intruding." "Never," Ethan signed, stepping aside. They sat at the small kitchen table, cocoa steaming between them. Michael held an envelope, unopened. "I wanted to give this to you in person," he said, sliding it across. Inside was a letter from a national council. Official language, careful words. Funding secured. Training mandated. A line that mattered most circled in pen. Lived experience to guide implementation. Ethan swallowed. "This belongs to you," Michael said. "To all of you." Ethan shook his head gently. "It belongs to anyone who's ever been misunderstood." Michael nodded, eyes shining. "That too." From the hallway, Noah peeked in and waved. Michael waved back, exaggerated and clumsy, making Noah laugh. After Michael left, Ethan tucked Noah into bed. Snowlight spilled across the room, turning everything blue and calm. "Daddy," Noah signed sleepily. "If I'm scared again." Ethan leaned close. "I'll see you." Noah nodded, already drifting. Ethan stayed until the breathing slowed, then turned off the lamp and stood in the doorway. He felt the familiar ache of love, sharp and gentle at once. Before he went to bed, Ethan sat at the kitchen table and opened his laptop. Messages waited. Some from officers sharing stories. Some from parents. Some from strangers who had finally found words. He read a few, then he closed the screen. Because some things were meant to be felt, not counted. If the story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried fear and still chose kindness. One click can be your way of saying, I felt you, and if you know someone who needs to be seen, share this with them. Let it travel where voices sometimes can't. The snow kept falling through the night. By morning, the city looked softer, quieter, not fixed, but kinder in a way a new day can be kind. Simply by showing up, Ethan woke early and made breakfast. Pancakes this time. Noah helped flip, concentrating hard, proud of each success. Batter splashed. They laughed. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, then faded. Ethan paused, listening. He didn't tense. He didn't run the night again in his head. He trusted the pause. He trusted the hands. Because the moral of the story wasn't about a CEO or a courtroom or even a misunderstanding. It was this. Slow down when fear rushes you. Look for the human before the headline. Ask before you assume. And when you're unsure, choose care. It might be the difference between a moment that breaks someone and one that lets him begin again. Ethan wiped his hands on a towel and knelt to Noah's height. Ready? He signed. Noah grinned. Always. And together, they stepped into the day, not loud, not perfect, but understood.